Hello everyone, welcome back to 3 Minute Theology. As a young boy, I remember some of the discipline administered to me from my parents, and it was painful at the time, but it served a purpose of correcting me and restoring my relationships with those whom I had hurt or wronged. Last week we looked at the purity and unity of the church as a characteristic of the church. Well, this week we're looking at the way in which this purity and unity is maintained, and that's through church discipline. Church discipline is the means in which Christ Jesus gives to his church to promote its purity and limit the havoc caused by persistent sin. And the goal or purpose of this discipline is to restore the person and help them grow in purity. So let's look at some biblical examples of church discipline. This is mainly a New Testament theme, but we can see from the Old Testament how the people of God resolved disputes and restored relationships. When Israel was established after the Exodus from Egypt, Moses was the main dispute resolution person, and the people would come to him and he would pass judgment on how the dispute should be resolved. There could be no doubt that these judgments sometimes involved discipline, some even as severe as stoning to death. And thankfully we now live in a time where church discipline does not involve stoning to death. But do you notice the principle there? The judgment and discipline that Moses was administering was for the purpose of restoration of relationships, but also of maintaining purity and unity of the people of God. Fast forward to Jesus' time and his ministry, we also see that he promoted the restoration of relationships and maintaining of purity of the people of God. One of the best examples comes from Matthew chapter 18. And this teaching involves 4 steps. The first is a personal, one-on-one conversation with the offender. The person who has been sinned against goes to the offender and requires them to acknowledge their sin. And if the offender acknowledges their sin, the two are reconciled, forgiveness can take place, and the process is complete. But if there's no admission of sin, the process escalates. The offender is again confronted with the help of 1 or 2 more witnesses from the church to ensure that the person is confronted appropriately. And these witnesses are usually leaders within the church. Again, if the offender acknowledges their sin, the matter is settled, but if there is no admission of sin, then it escalates again. And this 3rd stage involves the entire church. The offender's sin is made known to the church and their failure to acknowledge said sin in the first 2 stages. Again, reconciliation is made available by way of admission of sin and seeking forgiveness and reconciliation. If admission of sin is not made, then the first stage is essentially excommunication from the church. In every stage of this process, the goal is reconciliation and regaining purity and unity, just like the goal of any discipline that we received as children. And I thank God for establishing these processes for the church. There's a thought for 3 minutes.